You're listening to Becoming Wildly Resilient, brought to you by University of Kentucky Human Resources, Health and Wellness. Together, we will discover how we can thrive at work, home, and beyond. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming Wildly Resilient Conversations. My name is Sebastian Calmes. I'm a wellness specialist with UKHR Health and Wellness and your host for today's episode. Today we're talking about occupational well-being, and I'm joined by Jason Chadwell, a senior organizational development specialist and credentialed professional coach at UK Healthcare. Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sebastian. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Glad to be here with you. To begin, could you tell our listeners a little about your role at the University of Kentucky and the work you do here?
Absolutely. For the past 5 years, I have supported the learning and development of UK Healthcare, College of Medicine, and Eastern State Hospital employees. My title is Senior Organizational Development Specialist, and I'm a credentialed professional coach through the International Coaching Federation. I'm also a certified facilitator, and I facilitate a wide range of sessions for many of our team members and leaders. And I manage several leadership development programs as well.
What brought you to this career path? Was it something you always knew you wanted to do?
No. It was probably a long, circuitous process. I majored in psychology and received my master's in industrial organizational psychology, which had a very strong focus on understanding the workplace and how people exist in work environments. I started more in traditional human resources type of work. I worked for state government, city government, and I did make my way to a different healthcare system, just doing many different types of human resources roles and functions. Prior to coming to UK, I worked for a small evaluation and monitoring company for 13 years. And that took me in a different direction. It wasn't my love, it wasn't what I wanted to do, but it did give me a lot of great analytical skills. And there were many things I've been able to bring to my current role. I think much of what I experienced prior to UK prepared me for this role, but this is probably the best job I've ever had and the most interesting job, the most creative, and it's probably what I want to do for the rest of my career.
Jason, from your perspective and perhaps informed by your experience in your role, how would you define occupational well-being and what do you see as its core elements?
I would define occupational well-being as people wanting to show up to work each day. They understand what a, quote, good job is, and they want to do a good job. And they make efforts to do that. Connection to work also means disconnection from work. And people want to believe they can fully step into their home life when they leave work. That's important to them. I hear that all the time from leaders. Finally, I believe that safety is a key element of occupational well-being, not just physical safety, which is extremely important. Many of our healthcare team members in particular face that as a challenge, unfortunately, but feeling safe to share their opinions and to voice their concerns. Those are some of the key elements of occupational well-being from my perspective.
Building on that, when thinking about the factors that contribute to someone's occupational well-being, what are those areas you find most impactful? For instance, how does the nature of the work itself or their relationships with coworkers play into someone's overall sense of well-being at work?
I think a sense of belonging is really important. Do I feel like I should be here? Do I belong? Feeling understood. Do others get me? That's important as well. Being listened to in a very intentional way. Listening is an extremely important skill. We talk to our leaders all the time about deep, intentional listening. And I do facilitate a number of sessions that focus on personal needs. People have professional needs. They also have personal needs. There's something called key principles, which are essentially action steps or behaviors individuals can lean into that address those personal needs. That's especially important for leaders, but it is something all team members can develop as a skill set. Things like listening, sharing, enhancing and maintaining esteem, providing support, those are ways of addressing individuals' personal needs. I encourage individuals to think about how they're fully stepping into those behaviors because they're critical to feeling okay in the workplace. I think we all need to feel okay in our workspaces. When we think of the concept of workplace culture, and I've been able to work with teams specifically around culture, what it means to build an intentional culture, we know leadership is probably the most essential element. And employees want an effective, empathic leader. It's one of the reasons we spend so much time developing our leaders. But all of us are providing support to our team members all the time, but also acknowledging we all have responsibilities, and it's important we embrace those responsibilities, mainly because there's such good learning opportunities. They allow us to thrive and flourish in our roles and as human beings.
Do you find there is a strong connection between that feeling of safety in the workplace and work product?
I do. I think when you feel that sense of safety, you're not always wondering if someone is judging you, someone is looking over your shoulder. It's a freeing kind of feeling. I've seen instances when safety didn't exist. I've experienced that in previous jobs myself. I had a very impactful experience in a negative way, but I learned a lot from it. We learn from everything, I think, where every single day you didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know who you were going to get in terms of a leader. And there was a very unsafe feeling in that situation. I think it created some long-term trauma. We don't want to create trauma in the workplace. That's unnecessary. It's incumbent upon all of us, not just leaders, but all team members, to ensure we're creating that sense of safety for our coworkers and for our team members.
Yeah, I totally agree. I did the math before this meeting. About 23% of our weeks, if we work a 40-hour work week, is spent at the workplace. That's almost a quarter of our week. We're going to want to be interacting with people that make us feel safe. We're going to want to be helping to contribute to a place that feels safe. That is a strong argument for even caring about this.
Absolutely. I also think it's a selling point for our university. People will hear about that. If they know the University of Kentucky is a place where people feel safe, they'll want to work here. We always want to attract great talent to the university. My focus has been on healthcare, but it's throughout the entire campus.
How do we know when our work is impacting our well-being negatively?
One of the things we may talk about a little bit more is values today, but I believe that if you do have a strong connection to your values and you're aware of how you're aligned with those values in every aspect of life, that can give you a sense of whether you're having a negative impact. And if my work does not align with my values, it will negatively impact my well-being. It's going to happen. Unfortunately, some people haven't recognized that misalignment. They haven't done the work they need to do to be able to see there's a misalignment. So what they experience are things like a sense of dread to go to work every single day, disinterest in their work, disconnection from their team members, and a lack of control over their work in general. We want to feel like we have a sense of control when we're working. For some, there may be some physical symptoms, tiredness, headaches, whatever it may be, a broad range of potential physical symptoms. But there were likely clues or signs before that preceded those physical symptoms that pointed to a problem. We just didn't see that problem soon enough. And sometimes we don't pay attention to those signs. And that's why it helps to take some time to routinely listen to ourselves and to think about how we're truly feeling. In coaching, people always laugh when I bring up the question, how does that make you feel? I say it in not only coaching, but when I'm facilitating sessions. But we should be asking ourselves that question on a consistent basis. Looking inward, how does that make me feel?
If I'm feeling negative emotion, fear, anger, anxiety, then are you saying that is pointing to a potential value discrepancy?
I think it means we're not living in alignment with our values. Maybe it's a situation where we don't know what our values are. We haven't done the work necessary to be able to speak to them, to communicate them to other people. But even if we do know our values, sometimes we don't live in alignment with those values. You have to be intentional about it because you can get off course easily.
Many experts emphasize the importance of value discovery and refinement as foundational to finding meaning and satisfaction in our occupations. For listeners who might feel disconnected from their current values, what are some actionable steps or introspective exercises they might use to identify and align their personal values with their work, particularly when that connection isn't immediately obvious?
First, if you're not familiar with the concept of a wellness wheel, I encourage you to research it. There are many different versions out there. It's a visual tool used to represent and assess different aspects of wellness and well-being. Now, I know those two terms are a little bit different, but I'm lumping them together because it does encompass both of those areas. It shows wellness and well-being are multidimensional, and dimensions such as emotional, financial, social, occupational. There's a wide range of dimensions, and some of them look different from one another. Some wheels are structured with a specific rating scale or action steps that are associated with them, but even the most basic ones provide an opportunity to intentionally examine each key area of that wellness wheel, of wellness and well-being, which is really values. We're really speaking to values there. So I do want to step back and say values work is central to pretty much everything I do as a coach and as a leadership facilitator, supporting various programs, supporting teams in group settings. And I often pair a values discussion with a discussion about needs. What are your values and what do you need to fully realize a life connected to those values? And I routinely discover a lot of people have not truly examined their values at a really deep level. What's important to us, our values, those things guide our personal and professional decisions. They underpin, they're the support for all those decisions. And values are the things that lead us to that next step, whatever that next step is. The awareness of our values is probably the most important thing here, but also the application of our values in our lives, in our workplace, in the work we do in our jobs. So what exactly are we doing with the knowledge of our values?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree on all points. One of University of Kentucky's main mottos is, "We're here to serve Kentucky." That is an immediate value match for me. But I had to investigate that because when I hear that, I don't feel a negative reaction in my body. And I actually get excited about that.
That's such a great point. Specifically with UK healthcare, we have a defined set of values. I had the opportunity to lead our new employee orientation for almost 5 years. It never felt forced or inauthentic when I stood up in front of sometimes a group of 100, 150 people and talked about those values because I truly believed in them. And I know those values are what ultimately will lead to the best service for the people we take care of. In healthcare, it's serving our patients. We want to make people well. They come in not so well a lot of the times, and sometimes they're coming to us on their very worst day. It's so important for us to remember why we're here and what is driving us to do the work we're doing, the values.
Yeah.
Personally, my mother just had a procedure done at one of the UK healthcare facilities. She had to stay overnight. I felt completely comfortable knowing she was going to be taken care of in one of our facilities because I know our people and I know why we're here. I know the quality of service we provide. I've experienced myself. Those are the outcomes of the importance you place on the work you do and really thinking about ultimately what impact it's having.
How can we find the value connection when it's not immediately obvious? The ability to connect actions to the greater purpose of the University of Kentucky.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad, about 10 or 11 years ago, was in the hospital. He had a long-term illness. And the person who made the biggest impact on him, he had great nurses, he had great physicians, but the person who made the biggest impact on him was the person who cleaned his room. Some people may look at a role like that and think, I don't impact the overall mission. I'm not making a huge difference or a noticeable difference in why we're here, in that ultimate mission of the organization. But that was a perfect example of how a role often not seen and not talked about a lot is maybe one of the most important roles. It's important to tell those stories. One of the things we do well at UK is we tell our story. I encourage people to continue to think about what their story is and how they want to communicate it and who they want to communicate it to, because it's going to resonate. Maybe not with everybody, but it will resonate with some people, and it's going to make a big difference. It is difficult for individuals to see the connection between what they're doing on a daily basis and those longer-term goals we have for the organization. We have long-term goals for this organization. There are big things happening here, exciting things happening here. It is difficult for some people to see that connection. So we have to talk about it. We have to ask them questions and say, how do you think you're contributing? How do you want to contribute to these bigger goals? And having those discussions, I think, is really essential.
Do our actions explicitly show what our values are? Like if I say, I value service, but you never find me working from a place of service, do I actually value service?
Yeah, that's hard to say. It depends on the individual, obviously, and it also fluctuates within a person. I haven't encountered many people who are the manifestation of the values they espouse every single minute of the day. I think we have a lot of factors and forces that are challenging us and working against us all the time, maybe not even intentionally. I was thinking about driving to campus today. It's hard to get through campus and to find a parking space and to walk to the location. It's challenging to do things like that. When I think about those moments and whether every single action I took was aligned with my values, I can't say every single thing was perfectly aligned, but it doesn't mean I've lost sight of my values. I think that's why we always have to ask ourselves how we're feeling, what we're thinking. We have to check ourselves occasionally to determine whether we are truly in alignment with those values. We also need to ask for feedback from other people. What do you see from me? Is my action in this situation, are my behaviors in general demonstrating what I espouse as my values? If they're not, tell me, because I want to fix it.
It's often suggested our experience of work isn't solely about the tasks themselves, but significantly influenced by our mindset and perception. Some research indicates a mindset or perception shift can transform our experience of work, even if external circumstances remain largely the same. In your opinion, how accurate is this, and could you elaborate?
This is core to my work as a professional coach. And one of the reasons I spend so much time and energy when working with leaders in a coaching relationship is to advance toward a different way of looking at situations. And I do this when I facilitate group sessions as well. Sometimes I'll say, I'm going to flip the script here. Let's just think about this completely differently. We often get into a narrow, limiting way of thinking that does just that. It limits us. And we believe that's the only way. Even though you asked about working within a largely unchanging external circumstances, when we change our mindset, it often changes our behavior, which sometimes changes our circumstances. We act on that environment rather than waiting for that environment to act on us. It is important that people feel like they have agency to be able to change their environment when necessary. I think that's really important for individuals. Not everything can be changed, but if we walk into a workplace, for instance, and we feel like I can't make any changes here, sometimes that becomes defeating and we lose motivation. I'm also reminded of the concept of growth versus fixed mindset. That is a concept that has been heavily studied by Carol Dweck. I believe she was at Stanford University or continues to be connected to that university. The core focus is the degree to which we believe we can achieve whatever we want. The sky's the limit, or whether we are limited by some innate ability. I routinely talk with leaders about encouraging a growth mindset in others to ensure the potential of their team members is not limited. It's not only to help ensure greater well-being, which it absolutely does, but we often discover talents and unique skills we did not know existed in our team or our organization. So focus on that growth versus fixed mindset and be willing to approach situations from a different perspective.
Could you give us an example of what the growth mindset looks like?
I would say growth mindset is my current job. The fact that 5 years ago, I moved into a role with a leader who did not place any limits on me, who every single thing she said and did related to and pointed to opportunity. I stepped into those opportunities, and I continue to step into those opportunities and experience success. There are opportunities for success, and I think we always have to be willing to try things. My previous job, I had gotten into more of a fixed mindset. I would say I was in a role that didn't fit me well, and I believe I was never going to be a superstar in that area. I know that, and that's perfectly okay. We can't be great at everything. But I allowed myself to become fixed in my way of thinking. I allowed myself to believe I couldn't grow and develop in that role. So that's why it's important to try different things and put ourselves into different environments, because we never know what's going to work for us until we experience it.
Absolutely. What shifted your mindset?
It's almost like my behavior shifted my mindset because I made a decision. I knew for a long time it wasn't the right role for me and it wasn't the right geographic location. I was in a different physical location. I didn't know where I wanted to go after that, but I knew that wasn't right for me. I had a house. I sold my house. I moved into a rental property as a transition. Fortunately, I worked in a small company where we were all essentially friends, and I could let them know what my future plans likely would be. So they knew I was going to be moving on. Those decisions and those action steps prompted me to make those additional changes. It's like I had to act. Because if I'm going to sit here and just continue to think about it and ruminate on it, it's not going to happen. I have to take some action steps. It was, I'm going to sell my house. And then everything unfolded from there.
Any wisdom you could share with listeners about how to overcome the fear associated with the risk to change your situation. Would you agree that is one of the primary barriers to people making a change?
Fear, not wanting to take a risk, absolutely. Fear is a strong emotion, it's a strong feeling, and it drives a lot of things people do. It's one of the conditions I reject quite a bit. I don't like fear-based tactics and fear-based ways of living. I have family members who act based on fear, and I also see it limits them, and they don't achieve what I know they can achieve. I don't have the answer to overcoming that. I'm sure there are many methods and techniques, and there are things we talk about when I work with people in a coaching relationship where we can work through those challenges. For me, you just have to take the first step. And I also think making sure you have trusted people in your life who you can talk to, who will be honest with you about whether they think what you're experiencing is truly right for you. It goes back to values. Am I really in alignment with my values here? Have somebody in your life who's going to tell it like it is.
Which is another psychologically safe place in a way.
It is. It is.
Why is psychological safety now considered not just a nice to have, but a crucial driver of organizational performance, innovation, and employee well-being? What are some key indicators psychological safety is present or absent in a team or organization?
Let me take the second part of that question first. I work with many leaders and teams, and I routinely interact with them to discuss a range of topics such as communication, conflict, influence, culture, so many different organizational development topics. I can always tell from the outset whether individuals feel empowered to use their voice or not, whether there's comfort and connection in the team or not. Indicators such as the degree of sharing, whether they share or not, looks on faces. Are they tense? Are they more relaxed? Do they smile? Do they have a closed or open body position? Do they engage with me as a facilitator? I've had some sessions where virtually no one looks at me as a facilitator. Now that's daunting as a facilitator because my initial inclination is there's something I did, there's something wrong with me, but I've gotten past that issue. It's often because of the culture and environment I'm stepping into. I would also be remiss if I didn't refer to the existence of trust and maybe the lack of trust. It is a reciprocal effect. The lack of psychological safety leads to lower levels of trust, leads to lower feelings of psychological safety. You get into this spiral effect, and it's why trust is so essential to team functioning. Now, if we tie this back to values, psychological safety allows us to express our values in the workplace. When we can settle into our values, we're going to be more comfortable and we're likely to engage. Engagement's such a big deal. It's a really important focus area, and we're going to do a good job. If not, the opposite is likely. I just think about what we lose as an organization when people don't feel psychologically safe. We don't uncover and maximize valuable talents. We don't benefit from innovative ideas individuals likely have. And we don't achieve that level of engagement that's so important to well-being, feeling well in the workplace.
Burnout has been recognized by the WHO as an occupational phenomenon, with recent research strongly indicating it's an organizational issue, not just an individual concern. Jason, in your view, what are the primary factors that lead to burnout, and what strategies are organizations implementing to mitigate burnout at a broader level?
I think there's definitely a capacity factor. And we have to acknowledge that because for many of our team members, the workload is heavy. Specifically in the healthcare field, we're asking people to do a lot. The workload often leads to burnout. In my role, I have attempted to support individuals through concepts such as energy management, resilience, training. I'm in the learning and development space. Providing individuals with those resources and talking through those issues is how I can contribute. Building in moments of recovery can make a huge difference in managing each day. So recovery, that concept of what recovery looks like, is important. At UK Healthcare, we've had many conversations and training sessions around, and I'm shifting focus here just a little bit, around languages of appreciation. It's another concept I'll throw in there. Individuals who feel appreciated in the way that resonates with them is the most important aspect. It has to have meaning to them. They're more likely to be engaged, and that impacts conditions such as burnout. I also think burnout isn't just exhaustion. Sometimes we think it can be, definitely an aspect of it, but it can also come from not being challenged enough. Maybe an individual is disinterested in their work, or they don't get excited about what they do every single day. So the question is, are they getting enough stretch assignments? Are they able to engage and be part of projects in different areas of work? Things that may excite them. And are we doing everything we can to engage our employees? And once again, values. Is work and the workplace aligned with what people truly value? And misalignment with values, which we've been talking about, can contribute to a feeling of burnout as well.
Burnout can be the emotional, mental feeling of empty, exhausted, not engaged, which leads to non-engagement. Maybe it is because I'm like, my workload is crazy and I just can't handle it. Maybe it is because I'm not challenged enough. Talk to me more about being challenged enough, because I do see appropriate level of challenge as important to engagement, which helps us feel motivated to come to work.
In our energy management content and course we conduct occasionally, we have the different levels of energy, including physical, emotional, cognitive, which is the mental aspect of energy, and spiritual. So that gives you a sense it's not just the physical feelings individuals have. One of the things we talk about, and it seems a little counterintuitive, we need to engage in what's called training stress. We need to stress ourselves a little bit to experience ultimate growth. Yes, we need recovery, and it's a fluctuation. We call it an oscillation between the training stress and the recovery. They're happening all throughout the day. But if we're not putting forth a little bit of effort, and it can look different depending on the situation, depending on the form of energy you feel is especially depleted, then you have to think about what some of those opportunities are. If you're feeling like emotional energy is not where it needs to be, or that's where burnout is actually happening, then some of the training stress we have to do should be around connection with other people, for instance. Maybe intentionally putting ourselves into situations which are likely going to lead to certain emotions. We're kind of stressing ourselves. It's not bad stress. It's not the chronic stress. It's the good stress we need to put ourselves through so we can experience ultimate growth. It's like an athlete who stresses themselves and they train and do hard work, but the good athletes know how to recover as well. They know how to balance that out to ensure they're not at such a sustained level of stress. It's going to lead to exhaustion, potential physical negative symptoms, illnesses and ailments.
Yeah, how do I feel, or how does this make me feel? It could be a daily question.
I love that. You build it into your day. You're intentional about it. I know some people want it to be more organic, but sometimes we have to have a structure and we have to be more intentional about those types of things.
Which is developing an awareness about where we are right now. Am I having that burnout feeling? It's like, yeah, I am. Is that because I'm not challenged right now? Is that because I just can't handle the workload?
I think it's absolutely crucial. And I do it myself, especially in areas where I know I've traditionally struggled as a facilitator. Before I moved into this role, I never would have thought I would be a facilitator, standing up in front of hundreds of people, leading them through discussions and activities. And I had to develop strategies just like that where I ask myself, how do I feel right now? Because if I'm not feeling okay, then I'm probably not going to be supporting other people very well. What is it going to take to feel okay? Maybe I just need to step away, which is a great recovery strategy. Step away for a minute, get a drink of water, just to refocus a bit and come back, and I'm fine. But we have to know when we need to take those actions.
Two terms often used are work-life balance and work-life integration. In your expertise, what is the key distinction between these two concepts in the context of occupational well-being? Are there situations where one approach might be more beneficial or sustainable than the other for promoting overall well-being?
I think this comes down to what is important to an individual. To me, integration is bringing things together, and balance is more about keeping them separate. And some people may truly want to keep those separate. That's maybe important to them. It's not that they aren't doing an effective job when they are fully engaged at work or fully engaged with life. Psychologically, they just need to keep those two separate from one another. That's what works best for them. They need to have that sense of separation. To answer the question, I think there could be situations where one approach is more beneficial, absolutely, but that may be within a person, not necessarily across people. What I mean is an individual may fluctuate between balance and integration depending on their current work and their personal situations. I also think that constructs and models change rapidly. I'm sure there will be a new model that comes up at some point in the future, whether it's work-life balance, work-life integration, that changes how we talk about this issue. But the bottom line is people will always be people, and they just want to create the best lives for themselves, their families, and their friends.
What do you see yourself as, a balancer or an integrator?
I probably lean more on the balancer side. I have almost 30 years in my career at this point, and my perspective has shifted in terms of my values and where I place my priorities. I've also learned to separate work and life to the extent that it's healthy for me and that it works for me. Am I thinking about aspects of work when I'm in my personal life? Absolutely. But it's not the heavy stuff for me. For me, it is an opportunity to explore ideas and to be creative. And when I can step away and I don't have some of those day-to-day demands on me, it's almost like it frees up my mind so I can think a little bit clearer. For instance, I love to do road trips on the weekends, and the driving time often is an opportunity for me to think about issues related to work, but it doesn't bother me because I feel like I'm developing my knowledge and how I feel about something I'm working on at work. It's like my mind is clear in that moment. It's a perfect time to work through some of those issues that are difficult to process when I'm in my office trying to deal with some of the day-to-day things.
I understand what you're saying, and I see you as a highly engaged individual. I used to play lacrosse in college, and someone was like, hey, how often do you practice? Like, how many hours? And I told them, we go to practice every day with the team, but that is actually more like rehearsal. So you have the game, you have rehearsal, which we do with the team every day, but practice is actually by myself. I practice when I'm not with anybody, and I see open space to problem solve in a clear way, away from work. You're going to get some really good solutions for work. I see that as how I'm describing this practice time. where I'm not obligated to do this, but it's what I want to do because I'm engaged and I want to have a really good rehearsal and I want to have a good game. And that can be applied to anything. When we show up to work, it's like the rehearsal, and then the outcomes we deliver is kind of like a game, what it counts for. I think people that are highly engaged with what they're doing, there's value alignment, they feel psychologically safe, they like showing up to work. I think that would only make sense that they take work home, but in a positive way. Like, hey, I really want to improve this. How am I going to do that?
Well, the other thing I think makes people so interesting in a work situation is pulling in what we've experienced in life throughout our entire lives, reaching back across our lives. When we can draw from those human life experiences that happen in our personal lives, they make us more relatable, they make us more connected, people trust us more, they believe in us. We're better team members, we're better colleagues. It is difficult to say, I'm going to put work over here and my personal life over here. I don't think that ever truly exists because we're not one person in our personal lives and a completely different person in our work lives. We're the same person. We may show up a little differently. We may interact with people differently in those environments, but at our core, we are still the same person. And I think it's important to be okay with sharing some of who we are as human beings in the workplace.
Which in itself can feel like a risk.
It can. You have to be vulnerable, and vulnerability can be scary for people. Some people love it because of their personality or their behavioral style. Other people, not so much. And we have to respect that in individuals. If that's what works for them, I think we do have to make sure we respect that. But also we have to ask people questions. We have to get to know them a little bit better because maybe they just want somebody to ask them questions to pull those things out.
Jason, this has been a really enlightening conversation. To wrap up, if listeners only remembered one thing from this conversation, what do you hope that is?
I would say know your values, communicate your values, and live your values.
Thank you for listening to Becoming Wildly Resilient. This podcast is brought to you by University of Kentucky Human Resources, Health and Wellness. We offer a wide range of online and in-person services to support the well-being of UK employees, retirees, and their spouses. You can find experts in mental health, personal resilience, nutrition, and physical activity. We're ready to meet you where you are and address your unique needs. To learn more about the work, life, and well-being services offered by UK Human Resources, visit hr.uky.edu/wellbeing. You can also connect with us on social media and YouTube by searching @UKY Wellness or by email at healthandwellness@uky.edu.